It's about quality. Is that good?
Yep. Should pass it. Thank you so much. I'm proud to be joined here with Representative Mark Takano from Riverside and Dr. Raul Ruiz, representative from the Coachella Valley. Javier Hernandez, the Executive Director of the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, and Junwen Trujillo, the Director of Worker Rights and Labor Legal Services at the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, CHIRLA, and Melissa Shepard, Legal Services Director at the Immigrant Defenders Law Center. We have a strong and simple message for President Donald Trump. Remove Kristi Noem and reform ICE now. This weekend, the American people watched with their own eyes as federal immigration agents executed a peaceful protester in Alex Preddy. Alex Preddy was a VA nurse who dedicated himself to serving veterans and saving lives, only to have his taken in the most horrific way possible. What was the Trump administration's response? To cover up the truth and to slander Alex as a domestic terrorist and a violent assassin. For a year, Americans have witnessed ICE's complete disregard for human life. The killings of Alex and Renee Good are the latest and last straw. People are dying in detention centers. Children, like 5-year-old Liam Ramos, are being snatched after preschool. Masked ICE agents and Border Patrol agents are invading homes without warrants, and protesters are being murdered for exercising their constitutionally protected rights. Don't forget, Alex Preddy's murder marks the 12th time that immigration officers have shot someone since September. There have been other dangerous shootings that haven't resulted in physical injuries, but could have, including one here in San Bernardino in August. The list of abuses by this out-of-control agency are endless, and the erosion of rights is nothing like we've seen in the 21st century. That's why we're demanding 4 things from the administration. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem must be fired, or we will remove her through impeachment. Federal immigration agents must cease all operations in Minnesota and Maine and stop terrorizing our communities. The Department of Homeland Security must not interfere with independent investigations into the murder of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, and Republicans need to join with Democrats in passing reforms that include unmasking and identifying these agents, requiring warrants for enforcement actions, protecting sensitive locations like churches, schools, hospitals, stopping detention and deportation of U.S. citizens, and prosecuting officers who violate the Constitution and human rights, and have real standards for use of force training moving forward. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. We'll accept nothing less. Next, I'd like to introduce Representative Mark Takano.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you to Chairman Aguilar for hosting us.
Everybody.
And thank you to everyone standing here today. We are here with one message. Enough. Ya basta. CPD, CBP, and ICE are out of control, and we cannot pretend this is business as usual. Under Donald Trump's and Kristi Noem's brutal immigration crackdown, more than 50 people have died in detention. Many more have been stopped, detained, or deported simply because of the color of their skin or the language they speak. Words are not enough. We need action, and here's what Congress must do. First, Kristi Noem needs to go. Either Donald Trump fires her or Congress will. Second, the no strings attached money ends. No more funding for DHS until there is accountability, and no funding until there are real reforms. This is not abstract. This is not theoretical. This weekend, another innocent life was taken. His name was Alex Preddy. He was a VA nurse. He cared for the men and women who put their lives on the line for this country. As the top Democrat on the Veterans Affairs Committee, I meet veterans, their families, and the people who serve them every day. And among the very best are our VA nurses. Smart, dedicated, on the front lines, and some of the most inspiring people that I've ever met. So it is no surprise to me that the same person who showed up day after day for his patients in the ICU also showed up for his community in the streets of Minneapolis. Enough is enough. Ya basta. Every American should be able to protest without fear of being shot. Every American should be able to demand accountability without being branded a criminal or a domestic terrorist. And every American should be able to live their daily lives without carrying papers just to prove they belong. Those watching at home, hear this clearly. ICE and CBP are counting on fear to silence us. They are wrong. Do not let them. And now I want to hand the microphone over to my great friend, hermano, Raul Ruiz, Dr. Raul Ruiz.
Thank you, Congressman Mark Takano. Thank you to our Democratic Caucus Chair, Pete Aguilar, for his leadership, and everybody who's standing up here at the podium and everybody who is here. As Mark said, I am a doctor, and I'm an emergency room doctor, and because of that, my spidey sense says that, sir, if you could stand in off the street, that would be very helpful. It would because I see these cars passing by. Boris, can you make sure that we keep this area clear, man? I saw an episode of The Pit last night where I trained, actually, and so I'm just concerned for your safety and everybody else's safety here. Look, we are standing in a moment of profound crisis for our democracy and our shared humanity. And as an American, as a doctor, I'm deeply disturbed by the Department of Homeland Security's escalating use of brutality and violence against people in our communities. Under the Trump administration, DHS has become an agency that terrorizes families, kills American citizens, and operates with complete impunity. Over the past month, we have seen a horrifying escalation in the use of lethal force by federal agencies. This is no longer just about immigration enforcement. It is about the safety of every person in this country to exercise their First Amendment rights or have the ability to walk down the street without having to, quote unquote, show their papers, unquote. Just weeks apart in Minneapolis, the whole world witnessed the killing of two American citizens by federal agents. Renee Good, a mother of three, was shot in her car while trying to drive away from a protest. Alex Peretti, a patriotic ICU nurse at a VA hospital, was wrestled to the ground, pepper sprayed, and shot multiple times in the back while he was trying to help a fellow protester, and after they had secured his licensed weapon that was concealed. Neither posed a threat to the agency. They both should be alive today. And we must also remember Luis Beltran Yanes Cruz, a 68-year-old grandfather who died in ICE detention right here in Southern California, my district in Indio, after being denied adequate medical care. His family pleaded for help as he suffered from severe chest pains and stomach pain, but he was given only pills and neglected. And there are not isolated incidents. In the first 2 weeks of 2026 alone, at least 6 people have died in ICE custody. Federal agents are shooting people in broad daylight, using chemical weapons in violation of court orders, and invading homes without warnings. In 2025, 36 individuals have died under the detention of ICE, and 26 have died under the custody of CBP, making it the deadliest year in their history in over 20 years. If they are brutalizing and killing individuals open daylight in front of individuals who are observing and recording. What are they doing behind closed doors in these detention centers? We are hearing of neglect. We are hearing of inadequate food and water. We are hearing of abuse leading to death. We are hearing of inadequate shelter and overcrowded spaces. We are hearing of people who are unable to access their medications for their chronic illnesses. That is why I attempted once again to enter Adelanto detention facility today after giving notice 8 days ago, complying with their 7-day notice unlawful requirement. And yet they still denied me because they say they did not respond to my email to give me consent. So that means it doesn't matter whether it's 7 days, 30 days, or 4 months. They could willfully ignore the emails and choose not to respond and not allow a member of Congress to perform their constitutional rights of observation and investigation of how our resources that we pass into law are being used. So I am working to introduce the Humanitarian Standards for Individuals in ICE and CBP Custody Act in order to prevent deaths and to protect human dignity. Right now is the moment to act, and we must impeach Secretary Kristi Noem for misleading the public regarding the brutal killings of American citizens like Alex Preddy, the obstructed Congress by blocking constitutional oversight of detention facilities, violating the public's trust by misusing hundreds of millions in taxpayer funds for self-promotion and political patronage, and breaking the law by denying people's Fourth Amendment rights to due process. There must also be an independent investigation on the killings of Renee Good and Alex Peretti, not just of those who pulled the trigger, but those who aided and abetted, and those in leadership positions like Greg Bovino, who fomented this type of violence, culture, and brutality on non-criminal immigrant citizens, non-criminal immigrants, and U.S. citizens. These massive, brutal, violent raids of non-criminal immigrants must end, and they need to get out of Minnesota and Maine and out of our local communities and stop separating the families and causing fear of non-criminal immigrants and U.S. citizens. I have been receiving calls of U.S. citizens who are being pulled over and racially profiled and harassed, demanding that they show them their papers, their passports. U.S. citizens are living in fear of having masked, unmarked cars, unidentified individuals with guns, pulling them over and demanding to show their proof of citizenship or be brutally arrested and detained. That is not America, and that is why we must end it now and today. Voy a decir unas palabritas en español. Nosotros necesitamos quitar a la secretaria Noem de su puesto. Necesitamos investigar independientemente las matanzas de Renee Good y Alex Peretti. Necesitamos demandar que la justicia intervine para poder prevenir que esto sucede otra vez. Necesitamos parar de fundar la agencia que nos está aterrorizando. Necesitamos terminar con la agencia de ICE para poder seguir viviendo en este país con derechos humanos y derechos civiles sin ser acusado sobre ilegalmente, para demandar que nosotros enseñamos nuestros papeles y comprobar que somos ciudadanos y terminar con la violencia. Por eso estamos aquí, por eso estamos organizando juntos para poder proteger a las comunidades, la dignidad humana y prevenir las muertes que están sucediendo en público y adentro de los centros de detenciones. Gracias, y ahora voy a dar el micrófono otra vez a Peter Aguilar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Javier Hernandez.
Thank you so much. My name is Aguilar, Executive Director at the Inland Coalition for Energy Justice. Thank you, Congress members Takano, Aguilar, and Ruiz for standing with your communities today. We are here because too many lives have been lost, too many families have been apart, and too many communities terrorized by federal immigration enforcement. Federal agents operating under the Department of Homeland Security have used violence and force in ways that escalate fear rather than enhance public safety. In Minneapolis, 2 U.S. citizens were killed by federal agents. And we need to look no further than our own backyard to see communities here in the Inland Empire and in California brutalized on a daily basis and by violence and cruelty of this administration. Here in San Bernardino, as was mentioned by Congressmember Aguilar, a federal agent shot at a family. In Ontario, federal agents shot a man on his shoulder. In Orange County, federal agents violently blinded peaceful protesters. And at the Adelanto ICE Processing Center, at least 2 people have died this last year alone. Sorry. So this is not about one administration. This is about a system of violence that has been supported and funded by our own tax dollars. ICE, CBP, and DHS have operated with little to no transparency, too little oversight, and virtually no accountability. We must be clear. Our demand is justice and an end to this violence. And that includes removing Christian, that also removing Bovino, sorry, he was removed by as the head, but he's still working in Central California. So we need to make sure that he is removed from that as well. Part of justice is also ensuring that DHS agents can be held criminally and civilly liable for violating constitutional rights and murdering civilians. There must be real consequences for this abuse, not immunity and silence. We must also move our federal dollars out of agencies that have become instruments of fear, divesting from ICE and Customs and Border Protection, and redirecting forward community-based safety, legal services, and humane immigration alternatives. And we must finally and fundamentally end the practice of immigrant detention. Locking up our neighbors, parents, and children does not make us safer. It destroys families and leads to death and countless individuals. Moreover, immigrant detention has created a system in which private corporations profit off the suffering and imprisonment of immigrants. Our call today is not rhetorical. It reflects what families and communities across this country are demanding. They want accountability. They want change. They want a system that protects human rights rather than one that punishes humanity. So we say, vamos a decirlo en español, Noem fuera, fuera Noem, fuera Trump, fuera Bovino. Thank you, Congress members, for leading this charge.
Thank you. Julian Trujillo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Julian Trujillo, Director of Workers' Rights and Labor Legal Services with CHIRLA, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. Under the Trump administration, immigration enforcement has focused on terrorizing working class people, good people, while promising improvements in the economy and life for all Americans, failing to deliver on that promise. Instead of focusing on healthcare, education, things that would actually improve people's lives, the Trump administration is using billions of our tax dollars to sponsor an agenda of brutality, an agenda of violence against the most vulnerable, an agenda that weakens workers' rights for all workers, including American workers, including U.S. citizens, an agenda that erodes due process rights for everybody, including U.S. citizens, including Americans. DHS agents are acting as if they're above the Constitution, as if they're above federal employment laws, as if they're above every body of law, but they're not. The lawlessness of this administration must be stopped now. Those in charge, everybody, must be held accountable for the murders of U.S. citizens, for the murders of immigrants, for the brutality and lawlessness of their operations. And that's why we are here, to demand that everybody be held accountable, starting with Secretary Noem, but it will not end there, because we know more people are accountable, responsible for this, and to demand that not one more dollar of our tax dollars be given to DHS. And eventually, when all of this is over, make no mistake, we're going to demand that a pathway to citizenship be created for people who have been here for 20, 30 years and who are now being terrorized. I'm going to say this in Spanish real quick. Estamos aquí para demandar, para exigir que todos aquellos responsables por las muertes de ciudadanos americanos, por las muertes de inmigrantes, por la violencia, sean juzgados como debe de ser y que sean removidos de sus cargos, que ni un solo dólar más de nuestros impuestos se le dé al Departamento de Seguridad Nacional, y eventualmente, cuando todo esto termine, que un camino a la ciudadanía se cree para personas que han estado aquí por décadas pagando impuestos y que ahora están siendo la víctima de esta brutalidad. Gracias. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Next, Melissa Shepard.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Melissa Shepard, and I'm the Legal Services Director at Immigrant Defenders Law Center. Today, we are done accepting lies dressed up as policy. The Department of Homeland Security has turned immigration enforcement into a campaign of fear and brutality. Immigrants who came to this country seeking safety are now being met with terror. What's happening in our communities is not enforcement. It's violence without oversight. DHS has created an environment where masked agents can act with impunity, operating in the shadows, inflicting violence upon our neighbors, and evading responsibility. When there is no accountability, abuse becomes policy. The result is clear. Truth has been shattered. Communities are afraid to leave their homes. Immigrants who have made this country their home, and American citizens alike, are being treated like enemies. You cannot demand trust while refusing to take accountability. We are done with the lies. We are done with the excuses, and we are done with a government that terrorizes our communities. We stand in solidarity today with our elected officials to demand transparency and demand accountability. Safety without accountability is a lie, and we will not accept it.
Thank you, Melissa. We'll take some questions.
Yeah, I noticed. I noticed when you were talking about the need for Christine Miller to be fired. Does that extend to Stephen Miller as well? I didn't hear you mention him.
Oh, yeah.
Are you calling for him to be removed as well?
Look, all of them. I think Christy Nome is the most unqualified, inept cabinet secretary that we have, and that's saying a lot with this group. But she's got to go. The president can fire her, or Congress should, but she should leave. But clearly, people like Bovino and Stephen Miller are harmful to our communities. They're spewing lies, and they're terrorizing. They're enabling these agents to terrorize our communities. But Christy Nome is the one who is accountable. She's the head of the agency. She was supported by the Senate, and the president has the ability to fire her. They should all be gone. But Christy Nome is at the top of that list.
This question is for Congressman Ruiz. What did DHS share or ICE share when you went to the facility today about the denial?
What did they tell you about that?
They read a script saying that I needed to give 7-day notice, read an email that I was supposed to email, and then when I informed them that I did that, even though I believed that giving 7-day notice and their process was illegal and was confirmed by the December 17, 2025 ruling on the Neguse versus the Trump administration, which I'm one of the plaintiffs. They said that their new process since January 8th requires a consent and acknowledgement of that email. And since I didn't get it, even after I sent the initial email on January 20th, and then again on January 26th, informing them of my arrival, they denied me because they didn't respond. So what that means is that they can willfully choose to ignore a members of Congress request and state that if you did not follow the process and we did not respond, then you cannot enter. So what's the whole point of a process? So that means it doesn't matter if there's 7 days. It doesn't matter if it's 30 days or 40 months. If they choose not to respond, they choose to violate the law and not allow a member of Congress who has the constitutional right to provide observation and investigation and oversight on a federal agency that we are funding. And that is dangerous for the American people. It's dangerous for those citizens that are being brutally arrested. It's dangerous for the non-criminal immigrants that are being detained in those detention centers.
And is this something that you're hoping to raise? Because I know you mentioned the court, the lawsuit, right? That you're talking
Yes.
about.
So the members of Congress who have sued the Trump administration for denying our rights to enter are inserting another complaint as a response to the most recent January 8th secret protocols that DHS has instituted under Kristi Noem via a memo. So there will be more action in court combating their claims.
One more. The House recently passed a funding bill that included money for ICE, and 7 Democrats voted for that. In retrospect, was it a mistake not to whip those Democrats to vote against the ICE funding? And what do you do given that you didn't have complete unity in the caucus in terms of defunding ICE?
Well, we put up a strong vote opposed to that bill. 206 Democratic votes opposed to that bill. The Democratic leadership team and the members behind me all voted opposed to that bill. We sent that over to the Senate. The Senate is currently in those discussions now, but what I would tell you is, look, we saw this coming. We saw the death of Renee Good. We saw the lawlessness. We wanted to speak out, and that's how we can speak out. We all voted uniformly behind the additional $100 billion that ICE received, that they're still spending. Even if they were shut down, they could probably live off of that funding that House Republicans passed on their own on a partisan vote. But the members behind me, we all opposed this. House leadership team opposed this. And many of the members, the 7 members who you mentioned, some of them have even called on Kristi Noem to be fired and resign. So I think what you hear from House Democrats uniformly is that we need reform. We need reform and we need new leadership. And that's what we'll continue to speak out and speak out for.
AP, can I add to that? Yeah, I just want to add to that to demonstrate the extreme posture of House Republicans, because Democrats advocated for some common sense measures that all other law enforcement agencies abide by. No masks, ensure body camera, ensure that any search and entry into cars or homes are done with a judicial warrant, and that they have training in de-escalation tactics in order to put in parity the ICE agents' behavior with all other law enforcements. And they, every single time and every single one of those common sense measures, they denied. And so that's why we're also urging the Senate to not fund the DHS. And we're also urging that Leader Thune separate the other funding agencies, the funding for the other agencies with the issue with DHS, because it is Leader Thune's decision and his alone whether or not those other agencies have a partial government shutdown. It'll be on his hands because he can decide to separate those and deal with DHS as a separate entity.
2 Republicans just this morning, 2 Republican senators said that they should do just that. What Dr. Ruiz said, that 2 Republicans said we should split off Homeland Security, pass everything else, and then deal with Homeland separately. Cheryl Brown? I'll ask some of our friends too. I'll ask Javier to come up and answer that too. Well, look, community members have a voice here. And you saw in Minnesota, you saw 50,000 people take to the streets. Wind chill was below zero, and 50,000 people made their voices heard. In Southern California, we have 70-degree temperatures here, Cheryl. So we need to make our voices heard. We need to encourage our friends to contact their representatives if they don't see the world the way that we do when it comes to more accountability for ICE. And ultimately, look, we need to make sure our friends show up and vote in November too. That is an important tool that we all have to exercise. I'll ask Javier and then maybe Mark Takano to speak as well.
No, you go ahead.
Thank you for that. I think for us, we want to say in the Coalition for Immigrant Justice, we advocated to ensure that our Congress members didn't support more funding for ICE. We reached out to every single Congress member that's here, also to other Congress members that are not here, and eventually voted yes, for this funding. So it's important for us to remember there is community power. There's elections, right, that are coming up, but we don't just vote during an election. During the election. Democracy is something that we have to do 24/7. Democracy is showing up every day, at work, showing up to school, showing up in our communities, showing up when we're needed. And I think that's important to remember. In terms of protesting, like voicing our opinion, we still have the constitutional right to speak out. We still have the constitutional right to record what's happening in our communities. That is not going to be taken away simply because an administration, a president, or someone in power says that we don't have that right anymore. So we will not comply with those illegal orders that say stop protesting, that say stop making phone calls, stop recording what's happening in your community. We encourage people to continue to do that. We do ask folks to remain safe. We are seeing a very different time now where our rights are being trampled. And so we ask folks that if you are going to do a protest, if you want to record ICE, if you want to record Border Patrol and all these things that are happening, that you reach out to organizations and be trained first on how to do this as safe as possible. We cannot guarantee anyone's safety after what we've seen in Minnesota, but we want to make sure that folks are safe, and we want to make sure that folks are still exercising their right to protest, their right to record, their right to be American citizens in this country.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Javier. I want to reiterate what you just said. We all have First Amendment rights.
Don't obstruct and
to show up and
keep a
protest.
safe distance.
This administration is using unprecedented tactics and deploying technology to intimidate Americans from exercising those rights. Tom Homan, who they've sent to replace Greg Bovino in Minneapolis, he's no better. He says that they're using technology to facially recognize people, create databases of domestic quote-unquote terrorists. The idea that they're going to make you famous by exposing you to your boss. Well, let's just say, Mr. Holman, that your boss finds out that you were at a protest. Your boss is going to fire you for your First Amendment rights. That's a ticket for you to sue your boss over your First Amendment rights. So don't be intimidated by Tom Holman saying that he's going to make sure your boss knows that you're out protesting. It's a decent thing to do to stand up to these brutal and cruel tactics. One more thing I want to add to this. What must also stop are these Kavanaugh stops. What is Kavanaugh stops? Well, Justice Kavanaugh wrote the opinion that made it, that green lighted the ability for ICE or anyone else to stop you because of what you look like, because of your race, because of language you speak. This is unconscionable. I have legislation which would put an end to detaining people based on those characteristics. My own family, along with 110,000 other Americans, were under mass incarceration based on that, and I want to make sure that we have in statute an end to this. I am writing legislation now to make sure that this applies to DHS and ICE and other agencies. No American should have to carry a passport to prove who they are. No American should be afraid that because of who they are, they get detained just because of that reason. Thank you, Mark.
I will just say briefly, don't lose hope. Don't believe people who tell you protesting doesn't work. They're lying. everybody in Congress, in government, we are their boss. All right. So every time you don't like something, call your representatives, make sure they're aware, and don't believe anybody who tells you your protesting doesn't work.
Thank you so much. Last question. Thank you so much. I think some of us are going to be around if you have questions as well. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
I didn't know you were in here.